Okay, my name is Ishay Govender. I'm a journalist and I focus on food and beverage through the lens of culture and vice versa. I'm very interested in social justice issues. I am here representing South African people of color at the table. We are a network that tries to engage in empowerment of people of color in the broader food and beverage industries, and we prefer to take on a pan-African approach. So welcome. Today we are going to be discussing some of the things that migrants and refugees have been experiencing in South Africa under the pandemic. And today I have three very interesting people joining us, and I would like them to introduce themselves to you. They're going to tell you where they're based and what their relationship is with regard to either being a migrant or refugee, working with them. And to start off, Yasmin.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Yasmin Rajah. I'm the Director of Refugee Social Services. We're based in Durban, and we provide a whole range of services to refugees and asylum seekers in the KZN and more recently in the Eastern Cape region. It's not to say that we don't work with migrants. We work with migrants. Sometimes we're not able to do the same level of service with migrants as such, but we will refer you to somebody that can actually help you if we can't help you as an organization. So going forward, if you want some definitions on who's a refugee and who's a migrant, do you want me to go on with that?
So I was just going to say, we're going to get into all of that and of course into further detail of the kind of work that you were doing previously and that you're doing now. So
Sure.
Also to introduce themselves to our panel today, we have Khadim. Khadim, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, please introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. Khadim, originally from Senegal. I was born and raised in Senegal. And I moved to South Africa. I have a very long story. I don't know if you guys want to hear all of that, or you just want to.
No, please tell us. Situate yourself in the country. When did you move here? How long have you been in Cape Town?
Okay, cool. So I was born and raised in a very small village, grew up farming, and I grew up with grandparents. Was loved so much, but was a terrible boy as well at the same time. And I moved to Dakar when I was 18 years old, and I was doing carpentry with my uncle for a couple of years. Then I decided to move. So I wanted to see more out of life. So I first wanted to go to England. It never worked. So in 2011, I left Senegal and I didn't know where to go. So what happened is I couldn't say bye to my mom or anyone that was close to me because I didn't know where to go and they would be very worried. So I took a bus from Dakar to Bamako, which is Mali. So a couple of days in Bamako, I didn't like Bamako. And then I moved to Benin. Couple of days, I think 2 weeks in Benin. I didn't like Benin. And then I moved to Central Africa. 15 days there, same things. And and then I moved to the Congo. So I took a boat from Central Africa to the Congo. And 15 days on the boat, I go to Congo. 4 months in Congo. I didn't see myself living in Congo. And then I flew to Johannesburg. I got to Johannesburg in 5 January 2012. 2 weeks in Johannesburg. I didn't like Johannesburg. Then I came to Cape Town. And when I came to South Africa, I didn't know anyone. And 2 weeks in Johannesburg, I didn't like it. Then I came to Cape Town. And and 2 weeks here, I had asylum seeker. And someone offered me a job in the Free State. I went there for 4 months. I didn't like it. Then I came back to Cape Town. And I found a job as a carpenter for about 6 months. And then I quit the job. Then I started doing my own business, which is like coffee. So I got to the coffee industry and coffee on the go out of backpack. for since, yeah, that was 2013. And yeah, till now. Yeah. So we start so for the first we were doing only coffee, and then we start doing Senegalese cookies, and then sandwiches, and then food.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into the cafe or the restaurant that you opened shortly. Raphael, I would like you to introduce yourself to us. Please tell us where you're from originally, where you're situated now, and what you've been doing since you've come to South Africa.
Okay, my name is Raphael Kapinga. Yeah, I live here in Durban, and I've been studying and I got my matric recently. It's been now 9 years since I'm here in South Africa, and I was associated with RSS, and they've been helping us with school and things like that. And I work part-time during the holidays and when I close school, and I received my matric last year. So now I've been working at school at a restaurant, an ice cream shop. So I work there part-time, especially when it's busy, and that is what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Okay. So it's what you're doing currently or what you were doing?
That is what I used to do, but now I stopped because it's not that busy. But as soon as it becomes busy again, they'll call me back. I've been working there for more than 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you and welcome. So we know that in South Africa, there are approximately 2.2 million foreigners living here, and between 500,000 to 700,000 undocumented immigrants. But as we chatted in the beginning with Yasmin, who is an immigrant, who is a refugee, who is an expat, 4% of all people of working age between 15 and 64 are foreign born. And according to a fact sheet by the African Center for Migration and Society at Wits University, there's a higher percentage of foreign born migrants who are employed compared to South Africans. Now we're setting up all the facts in the background first, but they are more likely to be engaged in more precarious jobs on the whole. So Yasmin, I thought we could just start off by weighing in, first of all, with a few definitions.
Okay, so the definition that I most work with is that of asylum seeker and refugee. So I'm going to start with that. So I'll start with the definition of a refugee. A refugee is somebody that has been forced to flee their country of origin due to persecution on the basis of their nationality, their religion, their political opinion, belonging to a particular social group. And that one is a difficult one sometimes to understand, but it's easy to, in terms of, if you look at somebody that is gay, for instance, or belongs to the LGBTIQ, and in their country, it's not okay. So I think I've missed something, probably nationality as well, right? So if you flee persecution on the basis of that, and you come and you cross over into a border into another country, that you essentially become a refugee because you're fleeing persecution. In addition to that, anybody that is what I would call a collateral damage, if there's conflict, if you look at the initial definition, there's nothing about war. So if you in a place where there's conflict and you've run away because of that, you're fearing persecution on the basis of that, and you cross an international border, you also become a refugee. Most countries accept UN conventions. These are the UN convention definitions, the individual one where there's nationality, and then the one where you've fled war is the OAU definition, or now the AU definition of who is a refugee. So anybody fleeing persecution is a refugee. Mm-hmm. An asylum seeker is a person that says that they fled persecution and they come into the country and they ask for refuge. So until they might well be a refugee, but until that country recognizes them as a refugee, for want of a better word, they'll be referred to as asylum seekers. Migrant, could be a foreign-born person that has come through. They might be a forced migrant in that they've come through because they feel that they've left their country. Maybe there's poverty. If you take Zimbabwe, for instance, there's a lot of political turmoil and there's a lot of poverty. So people move for better, might move for a better life. And so they come through. That would be a foreign migrant. Immigrant, maybe somebody that's come through and settled here, might have married a South African and then gets permanent residence. You know, there's a range of different immigration statuses, but the ones that we most work with, and I think the ones that we're discussing here, is those that have come through as asylum seekers, refugees, and possibly economic migrants, but in precarious work. That means they're probably on the bottom end of society, very marginalized. A migrant, an expat, for instance, is somebody that might have enough money to be able to settle somewhere else and get some sort of immigration status. Usually they call those that come from Western first world countries expats. You know, they have the freedom to move around between their country and here. An asylum seeker or refugee is not necessarily allowed to go back. Well, if they've got asylum seeker refugee status, if they go back to their country, even just to visit, they're at risk of losing their status, simply because if you come into a country and you say you're an asylum seeker or you are recognized as a refugee, it means that your country cannot offer you protection. So if you go back there, you're saying that you don't need the protection of South Africa, for instance, if you're in South Africa. I hope that's clear.
No, thank you. It's very important that we set this out in the beginning, and I think globally the conversation, we've also engaged in this kind of conversation about who exactly is, and it's particularly about who is an expat, and there tends to be a lot of discrimination. It certainly is a title associated with wealth and opportunity. The instant image in one's head about who a refugee is, it tends to be someone from an impoverished region in the global south. And both politics, war, all these range of factors, of course, have led citizens around the world to develop these notions of who is a migrant, who is a refugee, who is an expat. In other words, we come back to who is entitled to live in a place, and what freedoms are we allowing them. So to echo something that you had said earlier on about the kinds of people who move to a country as asylum seekers or refugees. On the 20th of May, there was a piece published. Now, this is going to relate directly to the way South Africa has handled the benefits that they allow or don't allow to refugees and migrants during the pandemic. So it was a piece published on Human Rights Watch, and it said, refugees, asylum seekers excluded face starvation. So I will just read the first few paragraphs. The South African government's COVID-19 aid programs, including food parcels, have overlooked refugees and asylum seekers. And then they specify, these include many lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, LGBT people who fled to South Africa to escape persecution. The government should take urgent steps to facilitate support, including from donors, for refugees and asylum seekers with little access to food and other basic necessities during the ongoing nationwide lockdown. The Ramaphosa administration should either ensure access to food for thousands of refugees and asylum seekers, or say it can't meet the need and seek donors to step in and provide assistance. This was from Diva Mavinga, the Southern Africa Director at Human Rights Watch. The government is ignoring the plight of refugees and asylum seekers currently confined in their homes and unable to work to provide for themselves. So speaking to Khadim and to Raphael briefly this week, this is definitely something that has happened to them personally. So I thought we could start on this point. Khadim, if you could let us know, when you first heard about the severity of the pandemic Can you tell us what your reaction was in the beginning, and then later on when you realized that the lockdown was going to exceed the initial 2 weeks?
For me, I felt like never really take serious. For me, it was going to be just maybe 21 days and then done. Not even maybe 21 days. And then it's been like expanded, and I say, wow. So there's nothing actually I could think of or I could do. And I had 2 employees. One of them is from Zim, and the other is from Zambia, and they're also foreigners. And I don't know what paper they're using, they're refugees or not, but I think they're also affected as I do. So they're still at home. Yeah. So we have closed the restaurant down and then moved out because my work also was going crazy. So I had to completely close the restaurant down and find a store to keep their staff. So yeah, I really don't know. I couldn't think of anything. Just move out and yeah, tell them to stay at home or find something else.
Yeah. So you told the people that you were employing, who were also workers of foreign origin,
yes,
that they will stay at home. And at this stage, did you have any access to assistance by way of help with were you able to communicate at all with your landlord about, what was happening, and if they could give you any sort of leniency?
So my landlord is also like a foreigner. He's not from here. He's from Cameroon. But I think he wasn't just he was just being greedy, and then because he wanted me to pay rent during the lockdown. Then I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because if I want to, I couldn't afford that.
Right.
Yeah. Or he asked me to move out.
Okay.
If
so
I
sorry to
so what he wants is me to pay the rent during the lockdown, or sign an agreement that I'm going to pay after the lockdown. Then I said to him, no, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm. So then you made the decision just to close the shop?
Yes.
Okay. And so in terms of actually getting some income, what have you been doing?
I started 2 weeks ago selling coffee out of backpack, just the coffee, prepare the coffee from home and go to the streets.
In town?
In town, yeah.
Okay. So up until 2 weeks ago, you didn't have any source of income?
No, not at all.
Okay. And on average, what are you making per day selling coffee out of the backpack in Cape Town?
Like now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can say like 20 cups a day. That is 20 cups a day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, 20 cups a day, you make 200.
Okay. Which is, of course, vastly different than it would have been if you were running the cafe.
It's really big time, yeah.
Okay. And one more thing I want to clarify, Khadim, were you able to receive any other support from any other source? Because one of the things that we know is the South African government was not offering any benefits in terms of UIF. And as Yasmin will explain to us later, in order to qualify, it's very complicated this to qualify for that minimal grant that they made available. One needs one's papers in order as well. And one of the other things that I think is important to mention, and Yasmin raised it the other day, she said that at the start of the pandemic, Portugal decided to grant all the migrants and asylum seekers who were living there full citizenship rights, so that they could benefit from everything that was state aided, and that they could survive. And one can't compare countries, of course, because our circumstances are really different as well. Our needs are different. They're very grave in this country. But, one has to also examine how the government could have potentially done it differently. Raphael, I was wondering, when the pandemic first was, when the lockdown was announced, and tell us a little bit about how it happened that you stopped working at Scoops. What happened there?
Well, it wasn't that busy at the beginning before the president announcing the national lockdown. So my boss told me I can just sit for a while and wait. And then when the president announced that, she told us that we were all going to apply for the UIF fund, thinking that even foreigners and South African are going to get. But at the end, she sent the message and she told us that foreigners won't be allowed to get the UIF fund. It's only the citizens are going to get it. It was a bit sad because we work together, but some are getting paid and some are not getting paid. So we're a bit confused. But thank God I received help from the artists because they were providing food for us because we weren't working. We were sitting at home and it was a bit difficult for us. We didn't know what to do because even the landlord itself, they told us that you won't be forced out, but you have to pay at least even little bits because you can't sit for free as well. But my mom went to explain to them that right now we won't be able to pay. And they understood. They told us, okay, it's fine, you'll be paying few. And we received the food from RSS they were providing for us. And when the president announced for the level 3, since he made the mask compulsory to everybody, so we took the opportunity to start making masks and sell them in town in order to get some money and to pay at least half to the landlord, and that is how we've been surviving.
Okay, and so Raphael, you live with your mom. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about your particular family situation. How many of you are in your home?
Yeah, we're actually 5, and my mom doesn't work at the moment because she used to sell downstairs. When they announced for the lockdown, nobody could go down and sell anything, and plus she wasn't hired to a company whereby she can get help from there. So it's our own job. She was self-employed. So if you're not working, you're not getting anything. So we were all sitting at home because we didn't know what to do. But we received help from RSS. That is the only income was coming in. And my sister wasn't working as well because she works at KFC. But in the moment she went back to work, at least she got something to do. And my mom, she's also trying again to go and sell. Since everything is back to normal now, she's just trying to sell. Yeah.
And when you say she's trying to go to sell, what does she sell?
She sell, she can sew. She sell
Okay.
masks. She can sew. She sell masks, and she's also getting orders from others. And we also have a place where we sell peanuts and beans like that.
Okay, so food items. And are these particularly food items that other Congolese people buy?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, okay. So Yasmin, I would like you to tell us, first of all, what is the general sort of work that Refugee Social Services performs? And what happened once the pandemic hit? Like, what did you find yourself doing more of or less of?
Right. So ours is a social services organization, and our work entails, it's a wide range. So it goes from counsel orientation to what it's going to be like in South Africa for people that are new to the country. We give them information on what sort of documents they need to have, help them out. We sort of do time limited material assistance so that they can find themselves a space to live, especially if you're a newcomer. When families are in crisis, we would give some sort of material assistance, but a lot of counseling, do referrals. So it's like it's a catch-all sort of service. We do language courses. Raphael will tell you we've got a product development. It's like a social enterprise. I think you've seen some of the stuff that a group of women have been doing. They've been engaged in sewing, and so if we do all sorts of things to help people to integrate into South African society and to find a way to make a living. I think, Khadim, you would know this. When you come into the country, you have to make a living. You've got an asylum document. It doesn't give you anything. it gives you freedom of movement, so you can move around and not be arrested for being illegal. But aside from that, that government document gives you nothing else. You don't get food, you don't get rent, you don't get a place to stay, a shelter. So organizations like ours try to fill that gap. But for those people that we obviously all can't deal with everybody that is around, but for those that are, sort of right at the bottom end that need the help. So we have to assess and see how we can help and where we can help. So that's what that's our normal work.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a lot of public health information. But we do information on everything. And we refer to everything, so to try to get people to navigate and to function in this country and the whole aim is so that once they've gone through the system with us, hopefully they can be independent.
Right.
So then we don't need to be involved. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to move to working remotely. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that. And so we moved everything to telephonic, where we would normally meet people face to face. Some things we couldn't do anymore. Yeah. And we had to, this is,
yeah. So
I haven't got COVID.
We're glad to hear. Probably just a case of the winter throat. So one of the things I remember in our conversations over the weeks, Yasmin, is you mentioned specifically how Refugee Social Services, and I believe speaking to Nolo from Bela Refugee Center in Cape Town a few days ago, same thing happened with her. You've moved into providing food and food parcels. So therefore, having to find ways, I assume, to either distribute your funds or gather new funds.
Yeah.
And specifically, and when we speak about food parcels, what are we speaking about? Fresh produce, the staple pantry goods?
So, yeah, we didn't go the food parcel route. Mm-hmm. Because we didn't have the ability, we don't have the logistical support to be able to do that. And also we needed to reach people throughout the province. And we're a small organization, there's only 17 of us in the organization. So what we did, and this has come from experience with working with displacements during xenophobia and stuff, from about 2015, we had put into place a system where we could give cash grants to people. And so when we needed to move to working remotely, when it came to assistance in getting food and food doesn't, all of you that are chefs and stuff, you get food and you get food. Food needs to be prepared. You need electricity for it. So we went the route of cash grants, and we were using mobile money. So we would do a telephone assessment. If we agreed that you fitted in our criteria, then we would put an amount of money into your telephone account, so to speak, so that you'd be able to withdraw it at a cash machine and pay for whatever you needed to pay for. So that's how we worked for RSS directly. But more than that, what we also did is we connected up with charities that were doing the food drops,
right?
Food parcels drops. So wherever we could, we have quite a strong network of people that we've always worked with. So it wasn't that difficult to connect up and say, well, I've got people, I'm going to give them some cash, but can you take over? Or can you drop off a food parcel and stuff? So we managed to do that. Look, I'm sure we've missed people, but I think we had quite a good coverage across KZN, and we included the Eastern Cape because there's there's no social assistance partner, as they call it, in the Eastern Cape. So we connected up with the Eastern Cape Refugee Center that didn't have the means to provide any of the social assistance, and so they would refer cases through to us, and we'd offer the service out in the Eastern Cape as well. So we've had coverage across those two provinces, so to speak, and we've reached probably, if I looked at the stats, as at the end of June, we'd reach around 3,000 households, which translates to about 22,000 people. If you count the people within the households, that's how many and that's just from the cash grants, not from where we connected people up to get food.
Okay. And Raphael, in your case, you mentioned an organization that's been assisting you with food. Was that also via Refugee Social Services?
Yes.
And were you actually receiving food parcels or money?
I was receiving money, cash, via the phone. It was much easier to get that.
Okay. All right. So, we were speaking about people under leniency and people understanding and people not understanding, and certainly in terms of the way the government the South African government hasn't gone to any, it seems like they haven't gone to any effort, but they obviously have their reasons, but to assist migrants and refugees in the country. What would have been of benefit to you? Like if you, in terms of you and your family's pressing needs, Raphael, what would have been of benefit to you?
Come again, sorry?
What would have been of benefit to you that the government could have provided that would have assisted you and made things a little easier for you and your family?
Well, the benefit was supposed to help us, especially when it comes to rent. Because every month it's increasing, they're not counting the days that we weren't working, sitting at home. They're not canceling it. They keep on heading the bills. So if the government was providing at least even a little bit, that will help us to decrease the amount of rent that we're supposed to pay. And we can concentrate on food and other things, and the money from the government can help us to pay the bills.
Yes, I think people also living in, social development housing have also received very little to no relief. In fact, they've had to motivate, and it's, I think, I also know personally of cases of, single moms with a household of children also not being able to qualify for that. So yeah, it's very tricky. And in your case, Khadim, I believe that you haven't received any support from any centers, refugee centers or the like. Is that because you didn't know about them, or you simply weren't looking for support in that way?
Well, I didn't know about them, and I didn't also never heard about it. And yeah, so I've never thought of it. So I've never think of getting any help from anyway. So that's the reason why I didn't do any research.
Okay, but in terms of your own, within your own circle of friends who are possibly also immigrants, was there any conversation about where we can get support, how we're going to get this done in the community?
No, I've never heard that. So I do know that with the Senegalese, they some of them get help, a little bit from our government, Senegal, but that wasn't much. I think it was about 1,000 rand. So actually never apply for it because it wasn't really helping. So I didn't apply for it.
Yes, and I understand sometimes all the admin involved,
exactly.
just to be disappointed in the end is not worth it in the end. So I have been looking for some established facts and figures, and I reached out to the African Center for Migration and Society in terms of how many people, foreign migrants and refugees working in the restaurant and hospitality industry. I have not been able to establish that figure, except to say what I mentioned at the beginning, that it is true that they are in comparison, there are more foreign-born workers who are employed. The 4% of our of people of employment age 15 to 64 are foreign, but at the same time that they're more likely to be working jobs that are that are precarious and labor intensive and often dangerous. But the one thing I did pick up here from their report is yes, it's a labor intensive. The hospitality sector is labor intensive. Another fact that I picked up earlier this year is that it's also the lowest paying of all trade industries, right? So, and in 2012, they say the sector employed, it was about 567,000 people, and 90% of them were employed by very small businesses looking at fewer than 10 people. So while the stats show growth of the hospitality sector and employment in it, they conceal the tightening of the belts for low-skilled workers in the sector. And I think this is something that, when I say we, I mean, yes, us as civic organizations and groups that are engaging in conversation, but also the government needs to come on board in a more vocal way, in a more transparent way, to discuss, because it feels like the effects of the pandemic are going to be long lasting, and we've had some time now, I think, to rethink, regroup, but also try to figure out how are we going to treat all the people in this country. And I think if South Africa ascribes to pan-Africanism, we have a lot to account for. Yasmin, would you like to weigh in there in terms of
Yes.
your perspective?
Well, I'm a little concerned because if you're looking at the discussions or looking at the media in the last week, there's talk already, and this started at the beginning of the pandemic. It's actually been a conversation from way before about limiting the number of foreign nationals in certain industries. And I'm hearing that there's a possibility that they're going to put in some restrictions when it comes to hospitality, because government knows that hospitality is one of the industries that employs, and there's if you look at the unemployment rate among South Africans, there's been all the xenophobic violence and stuff that has happened in the past few years and continues to happen, seems to be based on the fact that people are not employed. And so there's talk now amongst the Labor Ministry and Small Business Ministry that certain sectors which used to absorb a lot of foreign nationals will now become less easy for foreign nationals. And this is talking a lot to the truck drivers at the moment, because I don't know if you guys know what is going on, but there's been a whole, there's been a pushback of wanting all foreign truck drivers not to be employed and to give those jobs to South African truck drivers. So there's it's a complex situation in a country where there's a high rate of unemployment. It's easy sometimes for government, even government officials, to blame it on foreign nationals, when in fact I think your ACMS report will tell you that foreign nationals only take up probably about 4% of the work in the country. Yes. And maybe they are concentrated in certain places. And a lot of the foreign nationals actually also create employment for others. But when, especially around times when elections are coming in and stuff like that, foreign nationals and refugees and asylum seekers take the flak for the criminality in the country, for the lack of jobs in the country, all sorts of things. So yeah, it's a bit of it's not a good space to be in at the moment, because things, we've had new refugee amendments, the policy is changing. South Africa, for those who don't know, has a very progressive refugee act, where we continue to have freedom of movement and the right to work and study, if you're an asylum seeker or a refugee. But some of those things are being pulled back, maybe because it goes against the Constitution, but maybe because it's because of the economic conditions in the country. So a lot of the xenophobia has resulted from the economics in the country. I'm rambling on, but basically those are the things that we need to look at when we
and I think that's really important that we keep our eye very closely on, and I hope that this conversation is not triggering for you, Khadim and Raphael, about xenophobia. But I think it's very important that we keep our eye, very closely on that. We've had very terrible and ugly instances in this country in the past, and as we look at moving towards election time as well, I think it's and particularly when we face such great disparity, we face such, everything from infrastructure to sanitation to housing is a mess, to be frank. And it becomes very easy then to blame foreign migrants and refugees for a host of the problems. But as we've said in previous conversations, Yasmin, as it is in Europe, we often will blame people for taking jobs, but not necessarily be willing or wanting to take those very particular jobs. It's not like they are the most plum of jobs. But speaking of xenophobia, Khadim and Raphael, if you would like, could you weigh in on this? If you've had any personal experience, what your fears or concerns are about this?
Oh, well, for me, mostly South African things that we here to take their jobs away. But if you check in town, it's mostly foreigners that are trying to create their own jobs. And when they create, they make sure and they hire South African in it. If you check in those foreigners' shops in town, it's mostly South African who works, even though it's owned by a foreigner. So they are trying to create more jobs to help the economy. So if they try to chase foreigners away, the economy will also come down, if you notice that, because we are also contributing. And these foreigner issues, it's really hard on us because when they start that, they're very violent, and we're even scared to go outside to go to school because it's really tough to experience this kind of things. When you're black, we are like a family, but when you're being attacked by the same person who looks exactly like you, it's really tough to experience this kind of thing.
Yes, I can imagine that. And particularly, I mean, during young and formative years, to have that experience of living in a country and being discriminated against and treated in that way. In your case, Khadim?
Well, I think those who are xenophobic, if you look at them, they cannot do anything for themselves. So that's the reason why they're jealous of somebody who is coming from another country and trying to do something. And they only see what foreigners are doing for themselves, but they don't see what foreigners are doing for South Africans. As they just said, how many South Africans have been employed by the foreigners? And yeah, I think you cannot paint everyone in the same brush, but yeah, I think they're just like a silly thing. They don't really know what they're doing, and I think they need help to understand what's going on. I don't think that you can just sit at home and say that this guy's coming from somewhere else and take my job. No.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what this is. Foreigners who are also doing like very bad things, which is no one's agree about. I'm not agree about. Coming to somebody's country doing something that's illegal. That's not normal. No, it doesn't matter where you do that and where you come from. That's unacceptable. But doesn't also mean that every foreigners are doing illegal things. That foreigners are also taking their jobs. No, I'm not agree with that. And yeah. It's not also all the South Africans, it's just some of them.
Yes, that is true. But I think, there needs to be a lot more room for active dialogue about this and awareness. And I think certainly with education, to set the facts out and engage in conversation with people who you might not always have an opportunity in your friend circle, to have. May not be communicating with people who are from Senegal and Cameroon and Ghana, and so on. So I think it's just got to do with that as well. There is a danger, though, when things go unsaid, particularly when politicians either say things directly or imply things, you know, and I think that, that is really dangerous territory. And certainly in terms of us embracing our African brothers and sisters as they do with us when we are in their lands, it doesn't take us far at all, this kind of attitude. And I also think when it comes to activities that are legal or illegal, the two are, you know, they shouldn't be seen, you know, the two really shouldn't be playing in the same area. So you should be afforded basic human rights in spite of your character, though of course one hopes that you would be towing the line and following the law. And on that note, I would just like to ask you to share with us, what are some of your, I mean, we've gone through a really, really difficult period, and I imagine it must be taxing on you financially, emotionally, also in terms of your personal relationships. What are your hopes going forward? You know, we're all trying to emerge from COVID and the pandemic with some sort of positivity. What would you like to see for yourself happening in the very near future, Khadim?
So I'm looking at going back to the business. So I hope these things will be over soon, and then everything will come back to normal. But for me, I think the most important thing is actually to be able to have permit that are going to allow us as a foreigners to travel, because as you said, using asylum seeker doesn't really help. It's basically literally nothing, because you can't even have your own bank account. So our opportunities are very, very, very limited. You cannot fly in and out of the country. You can, if you have your own bank account, there's nothing actually you can do, literally nothing can do with asylum seeker. And yeah, I think that the government will look at that and then, yeah, do something about it.
Okay. And so in terms of your own personal journey there, you're still working on that?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at going back to the industry, like a European restaurant, as soon as I can.
Okay, great. Well, good luck to you. And how about you, Raphael? Looking forward to going back to Scoops full time?
Yes. Well, what I like for the government to do is for involving us too in those grind, because if you're working, we're also expecting to get like the UIF, for example. Since we are also here, we can't get help from outside. So we can only get help from the government here in South Africa, because we're also asking for help because we are asylum seekers. So I would like for them in future to think of us too, to provide something to support us as well.
Okay, thank you. Yasmin, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I'd like to add in. What I'd like to see from government particularly is that we've had a broken asylum seeker refugee system for too long. So some of these issues that Khadim and Raphael are talking about, I mean, for Raphael to still be an asylum seeker after 9 years is ridiculous. And this falls purely on the doorstep of government. So personally, my hope for going forward is that they fix Home Affairs in such a way that we get quicker decisions and people can get out of a limbo and not be worrying so much about their documentation, and that they can actually, you know, integrate into the country as soon as possible. Some of those horrible new regulations and stuff need to go. And we'll continue as organizations. I think I speak for the sector at large, where we're all fighting to make sure that that we abide by the constitution of this country, where we say South Africa is for all that live in it, and that the principles of respect, dignity, equality, justice for all, you know, we as a country live the tenets of our Bill of Rights and stuff, you know, that we really become that human rights, that country that embraces human rights for all human beings, you know.
Yes.
I know we live in a society where there's borders and rules and regulations, and I suppose they have to be there, but I wish for myself and for everybody who's sitting here, that we start treating each other as human beings, first and foremost, before we do anything, because laws are made by human beings. And I don't believe that they have to be stuck in stone, so to speak. Yeah, so that for me, that's my hope for the country and for society at large.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. So thank you as well to Raphael, to Khadim, who hopefully will be opening up Khadim's coffee shop again in Cape Town, and we'll come to support you. Thank you so much for sharing. On behalf of South African people of color at the table, our sincerest thanks to all of the centers and organizations that are working with refugees and all people across the land during this very difficult time, providing assistance, providing emotional support as well. For anyone who will be listening to this on recording, I hope that you are able to find the right organization to assist you if you haven't already, and we will try and we'll try and post some of the links down below the video as well. So please follow us, sapoctable.com. That's our website, SAPOC Table on Instagram as well. Thank you so much for listening, and to everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for your time. Take care. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.